lands with gratitude. And then also this work took place on shared territories of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples, and then a lot of it is really about Kwakwala territories. So grateful to all of those people and the places. So this is about developing optical character recognition for specifically for Kwakwala, and hopefully for other indigenous languages as well. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment. Just the big picture is that there's a rich written tradition in the language. There's a high value for community research, and these digital files are available only as scanned images. So I've actually been working on trying to improve OCR for older Kwakwala texts for a few years. I'll introduce myself. So I'm a professor, assistant professor in 2 departments at UBC, Indigenous Studies and Anthropology. I was trained as a linguist, and my main focus is working with communities doing language revitalization.
And my name is Milind. I'm currently a PhD candidate at George Mason University in the CS department. My training is in computer science, but my PhD specifically is in natural language processing. And in the middle, you'll see my PI, Adonis Anastopoulos, who is also involved in this work. He's part of the George Mason NLP group, along with Professor Zio Yao.
So similar to the Tsutina project that we've heard about in a couple of talks, this project takes place within a history of collaboration and existing relationships. So I've worked with people in several Kwakwaka'wakw communities since 2008, and with the language since 1997, and with archival texts specifically. A bit of background, the Kwakwala is a Wakashan language. It's indigenous to northern Vancouver Island and the opposing mainland. There are 18 distinct nations and 5 dialects, persisting dialects. And there is a very robust community of learners, multiple revitalization efforts and programs in various places, and some very strong second language learners. There are more than 3 orthographies, but there are 2 that are very commonly used now by communities. And there's an especially strong tradition of documentation in communities and by people just recording each other and their relatives, as well as external researchers coming in and collaborating. So Franz Boas came to Fort Rupert and spent 60 years working with George Hunt to record one of the dialects of Kwakwala. And that is kind of the prototypical Boasian trilogy was created out of that work. So that's another important piece of context in terms of what it would mean to have OCR for these texts. So the language, of course, like many, has been impacted by colonial occupation and forced relocation and removal from the land, as well as residential schools. So this work also takes place as part of a larger process of decolonization and is responding to other important ways that language has meaning and has value for the communities that are doing that work, including political, territorial, spiritual. These are some of the people that have been part of this work, and I won't introduce them all to you. Some of them came here in 2019 with me, but just to show you, there's actually stuff that's going on kind of all the time, way beyond anything that I'm even really involved in. And people do enjoy the work that they're doing to record the language and learn it. And they have resources like this is a First Voices site. I wanted to show you this because this is one of the main orthographies that people use. It's called Utmista. It was developed in Alert Bay in the late 70s by a linguist, Jay Powell, working with an anthropologist who was from Alert Bay, Gloria Cranmer-Webster. And it was developed for typewriters, so it has things like underlines and those things can be especially challenging for some, not for the OCR part, but for the later part where you're trying to do the mapping and encoding. So these texts that we are working with have a really important value for language revitalization. People use them and access them a lot, and they tend to just retype them because they don't really have a way of getting them into the form they need. And they also, there's sort of maybe 4 or 5 people who are really comfortable even reading them. And Boaz wrote the language with 13 different types of vowels and diacritics. Part of the reason that it's so hard to get the OCR working, but it's also like people don't know what kind of a vowel that is when they're trying to read it. So we want to reduce that manual effort. We want to make it possible for people to search these PDFs as easily as they would search an English PDF. And then there are downstream applications, NLP applications that also have a lot of meaning. For me, the most important piece of this is to take things off of people's plates who really are focused on learning the language. They're spending time with the elders who have the ability to teach them, many of whom are their relatives. And so I want them to be able to, if I can help them spend more time doing the most important work that they can do together, that's a bonus. There's a couple people here that you can see. It's a funny font thing that was going on there, but some of the younger learners who are part of an adult full-time immersion program that is paid, salaried for young people. That's in its 3rd year, entering their 4th year. Really exciting. Their proficiency is developing very quickly. And this is an elder speaker gathering back in 2009 during one of my first visits. And so many of those people, I hear their voices all the time, but only on recordings. Just to talk about the value of these texts, in some quotes that are from community members, we asked them, what do you use these books for? What would you use these books for if you could access them? So they say, we've used these stories. People who teach say that we've used these stories in class. I've used them for personal family research. They're extremely useful for supporting Kwakwala families to rebuild cultural knowledge, treasure boxes, and do genealogical work. Someone else said, I've never used this text before because it's not easily accessible. I'm such a beginner learner that most of the sentences are too complex and old-fashioned for me to understand, but the orthography conversion, so this is after we showed them the text, the orthography conversion makes them accessible and usable, and I'm super excited and appreciative. I use these documents to learn more of what it was like in the old days of our people. Okay, so I'll skip this slide. It's just about some of the benefits. And the data, just to show you, this is some of what it looks like. So they're from, sort of the first half of the 20th century. There's over 11 published volumes, and then there's a much more large trove of archival data, both type and handwritten, that's unpublished, including a dictionary that everybody uses all the time, but isn't searchable. So, and there's all sorts of different complexities to that data. So this is a sequel to something that I presented with Shruti Rijwani back in at Computel 6. And so we had a first phase where and what came out of that first phase was addressing these challenges, trying to get these characters to be legible. The community helped us choose the text, and this is one that has lots of recipes. It's got diagrams and instructions, step-by-step instructions for how to make a salal basket and then how to make a huckleberry basket, because that's a different basket. And all sorts of just instructions that people, cultural instructions, traditional ecological knowledge. So it was something that people were interested in and wanted to have. In that first phase, we were able to create a model that did reduce the character error rate from around 30 to around 4%. So that was very successful in terms of recognizing those characters. And Shruti used that machine-readable text and automatically converted it from the BOAS to the Utmista, and when we distributed that to people, they were really, really excited. I received it in the form of 1,401 separate text files, each of whom was named after the page number, each of which, 66, 67.txt, et cetera. So then in my lab, we compiled that into a first draft PDF for distribution, and we combined these three different these three different languages kind of on the same page. So so you can see that's like what the text file looked like. We had two pages. That's the Utmista conversion, and then this is what one of the compiled pages was like. So we were able to keep the pagination, which was is an important thing. We then sent that out to people, and we had a poll asking them questions about what they found useful, what they wanted to change. We got responses. The key, and then we sort of also distilled the key issues and started to figure out when we were working with Millen, what can we do? We had, we wanted to produce a new version of the book that we created, the 1921 book. The line numbers were missing, and that was driving people crazy. They're not page line numbers. They're line numbers that are tied to the text. And because BOAS basically was doing analog hypertext, every number that is important. So everything that is in the dictionary or in a grammar refers you to texts using the page and line number and the volume, identifying the volume. So people want those line numbers, and they had been removed at the very beginning of the process, and I didn't even have the documentation to figure out where they'd gone and when. So we had to figure that out. Millen helped us figure that out. Anyway, so we also wanted to know, can we make it transferable? How do we make it work on other books that don't have the same formatting, that kind of thing. So these are some of these other texts, interlinear text. That was, a bunch of people said, oh, we really want interlinear text. And I was like, in 5 years. Okay.
So I'll walk you through the mixed methods pipeline that we ended up following to address these different kinds of layouts, restore the line numbers, and incorporate Shruti's post-correction model to improve the quality of the text. And I'm using a running example, so you can also see the kind of process that we end up with. So I'm using a snippet of the book, and we're using Google Cloud Vision OCR, it's text detection module, to extract text from the images, and you can see kind of what that looks like. The Kwakwala does not look like anything like Kwakwala. It loses a lot of the diacritics, superscripts, unique features of the script, and this is especially common in multilingual pages where there are issues with the quality of the OCR, because OCR isn't just detecting characters in a patch of pixels, it also has a language modeling component to piece together the characters in a sequence, especially if there are blurs and missing blots and characters and things like that. So this is an example of what the OCR output looks like on a dictionary page. You'll have bounding boxes and potentially some other metadata for them. So the advantages of using Google Cloud was that it was mostly free for us. It's a commercial service, but every month you can use a fixed set of pages. And since this project was spread out, we had enough time to use the free version. And it's easy to set up, easy to integrate into front-end websites if you want to use it from a non-technical perspective, and even make it shareable to community members if they want to directly OCR something. Some disadvantages: it does not allow fine-tuning. We don't have access to the backend core model. It's API access only, but it does work quite well for Kwakwala as compared to the other models that have a larger learning curve and setup curve. So that's the first step. And to address the structural challenges that we ran into for different kinds of layouts across the different collections, we decided to incorporate language identification as a proxy for the structure of the page, because structure is hard to define. It could be columns, it could be lines, it could be blocks, paragraphs, anything. So we trained a fast text custom model on first pass English and Kwakwala text. So it's a binary classification model trained using default settings in fast text. And because the languages are so different and we have plenty of sentences to train the model on, we use about 1,000 sentences for each language for training. We get pretty decent accuracy of identifying the languages in the first pass. So it helps us identify and isolate the Kwakwala text so we can conduct further processing on it. And like Daisy mentioned, we wanted to ensure that we preserve line numbers, page numbers, figure numbers, other kinds of punctuation that the post-correction model, the way it was trained, does not handle. It assumes and expects only Kwakwala first pass text and then converts it into the output. So for extraneous items on the page that we want to preserve that aren't necessarily language, we also use simple Python script to identify them and mask them and store their indices so we can reconstruct the page in the layout that it was, the line numbers in the specific, next to the specific Kwakwala sentence where they were initially placed on the PDF. And it's the same with images and illustrations and so on. So we do this with a very simple script. So this handles the non-language parts. The lang ID handles the identifying the English and the Kwakwala and trying to separate them cleanly. For the post-correction model, once we have the Kwakwala isolated first pass text, we want to improve it because, as you can see, it doesn't have a lot of the diacritics and the uniqueness of Kwakwala that's important for reading. It doesn't represent the script accurately. So we use Shruti's model from her 2020 paper and trained on first pass Kwakwala text, corrected gold text. We replicate the whole model. We train it from scratch to create, it's a 2020 paper 5 years ago, to generate the same numbers in that paper. And then we apply it to our text. The model, we use it specifically because it's shown to improve the character error rates by 30 to 60% for Kwakwala. Like Daisy mentioned, from one of them, we ended up with single-digit error rates. We use the model as is. We don't use some of the modifications made for other languages in her paper that didn't end up working really well for a polysynthetic language like Kwakwala. And like I said, we trained the model from scratch to replicate everything and then apply it to our data set. And then we reconstruct it. We convert specifically the Kwakwala text into the modern orthographies using the D2P models that Shruti and Cedar Lab used. And then we evaluate. Okay, I have 2 slides left. So I'll show you the results from this high-level pipeline. So this was the high-level pipeline: OCR, lang ID for identifying the language components, masking for the non-language components like line numbers and figures and things like that, post-correction, reconstructing everything, evaluating with the goal data. We evaluate at the character level for textual improvements, meaning the number of errors you can have at the character level in a text. And for structural errors, we use a proxy evaluation system where we try to understand we try to calculate the maximum number of moves you can make on a page to kind of get the goal text back. So we find that, I guess these are if you can see the cursor, the most important, the text specifically, going from about 43 errors for every 100 characters to about 18 for this particular volume. And for the Kwakwala 1909 book, from about 33 errors for every 100 characters to 15. So it really improves the reading experience a lot for the community members. As next steps, we're hoping to investigate LangID modeling techniques even further for different kinds of books, include more typographical information like underlines or fonts, italics, things like that, more visual metadata into the segmentation process, other than just a LangID proxy, and of course work on more goal texts and share the texts.
Yeah, and just I know that we're over time, but I think my goal is to have like first a stable OCR package that has this pipeline or workflow kind of assembled and end to end ready to use. And it's okay if it's a developer friendly one because I can work with that for now. It'd be great to have it be something that's like end user friendly, but I think like those two steps that's my goal for the moment, and to have it work well enough on a wider range of texts. So that's it.
Thank you.
Question online, I think.
Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah. Recently, it's become common practice